happened to go to a conference with Bigg, Dave Purchase, and someone from the Community Outreach Intervention Project. Um, and I thought, this is what I have to do, because I had been feeling like my work was really just anemic. And so since then, I just uh, been working with CRA and learning something every year.
Uh, my name is Cheryl Hall, Deputy Director of the Chicago Recovery Alliance. Wow, I've been with the organization for 26 years, almost from the beginning. Um, the way I got into it was kind of different. We heard about a job and we signed up for it, me and my ex-husband. And we interviewed and dropped our resumes and got a chance to meet Dan, Biggs, and George, and John, and the other people. And we interviewed for about an hour. And because we was at dinner too, they took us out to dinner, like how Dan was. Mm-hmm. So Dan told us he would get in touch with us in maybe a week or two, and he did. And he offered me and my ex-husband, Michael Wilson, a job. And we accepted it. And wow, it was the most amazing thing that I had ever been involved in. When I first started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. What is this? This is a new thing to me. But after being here, working for the Chicago Recovery Alliance for about, I'm going to say 6 months. I'm going to give myself 6 months. I began to understand more about harm reduction. I began to understand more about any positive change. And in my 26 years, I've been able to build relationships in this organization, in this field that have been amazing. And I have been real grateful to be a part of this. What would we call it? I was thinking about some kind of militant stuff, just being a part of the organization, because I can't think of what I wanted to say. Maybe it'll come to me later. So yeah, that's what happened. I'm still here, and I'm really, really, really grateful to still be here.
Last week when we were talking about this webinar, I suggested that it might be difficult to talk about relationship building, because I was feeling like, oh, this kind of comes naturally to me. How am I going to break it down? But then when I thought about it over the last week, I realized that there was quite a bit of cultivation over the years in learning how to build relationships with people. And by people, I mean participants in our program, but also colleagues that work at CRA and in other organizations. I think the first thing that really became apparent to me here was the way the Chicago Recovery Alliance practices harm reduction is that relationship building is the cornerstone of our work. And if we can't do that, then what we're doing is just a public health effort, which in itself is good, but harm reduction is more than that. It's a social justice movement, and they kind of bounce off of each other, the relationship building and the advocacy that we do for each other.
Yeah, well, building relationships, you're right, Karen, about that. They are really important part of what we do, because in order for us to do our job right, we have to have a relationship with the people that we service. And it took but you know what? For me, it was kind of a little bit easier, when I first started. I built a relationship with Dan and George and them. I began to build a relationship with them, and they made it so much easier, you
Mm.
know. And then to start working on the van and building a relationship with our participants. And for me, it was a lot easier because I knew a lot of them
Mm. Mm.
from outside, from the communities we all lived in, So it was much easier because I had kind of a little relationship with them already. But then when it came to the harm reduction, talking about harm reduction, a lot of people didn't really get what we were saying. They just wanted the supplies and they wanted to leave, didn't really want to sit back and listen to us talk about how to use this way or how to use that way, and um, so it did take a minute to really engage with them in the real facts because they wanted to get what they needed and leave. It took a while. It took a while. It took a while to build trust, for people, to believe that we was being honest with them, and we was giving them some stuff that was going to be really helpful to them. And maybe that was because the people that we serve don't trust people, you know.
Mhm.
So it took a while. I'm not gonna sit here and say that. Soon they came on the van because they knew me, they trusted me like that. Well, they didn't, and then especially when I started saying, "What's the first letter of your first name?" and what month were you? But wait a minute, what you need all that for? Your mother's first initial. That was, So yeah, well, you know, it was really important that we have a relationship, not only with the participants, like you were saying, with my coworkers, and back then, I'm being honest, it was much easier to have a relationship with my coworkers then, and I don't really know why. It seemed like it was much easier to get into a kind of like we had a bond or something, Not to say that we don't have that today, but it's not as easy as it was for me back then. So relationships, all I can say, they are very, very important, especially in this field that we work in, because we have to have it where people trust us.
Yeah, and they have a lot of good reasons not to trust. There's people who use drugs are so stigmatized, that the relationships do take a while. Some happen very quickly. Others might take years, and um, I think when all of us realize that we want to treat each other with dignity and respect, that starts to break down that the harm that stigma has done to so many people. Um, the other thing we do, though, is, our mission statement: any positive change as a person defines it for him or herself. Um, relationships are important there too, because um, we have so many options to offer people, and each person is different. And so if we don't have relationships with each other, um, people can't tell us what they need, and we can't advertise what we have to offer. And like I said, every person's different. So we really do need to get to know each other for that reason as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really true right there. Um, people come on the van, and when they come, but a lot of times people just come and get what they want, and they don't really want to, talk. But during the years of me being on that van, I have had people that actually want to. They will tell me, I don't need nothing today. I just want to talk, you know. And I'm like, wow, just come on the van just to talk. Talk about what's going on with them, where they may not feel, comfortable talking about it with somebody else, but with me having gotten to know me a lot better, they'll come on the van. They just want to sit there and talk. And sometimes I'm telling you, they will stay there for the whole 2 hours. I'm working and I'm still able to be there and talk. And Karen said something. Any positive change, and that's how whatever they identify. That person might identify them they positive change with sitting there talking to me about what's going on with them because they have no one else that will understand. So I know what you mean when you say any positive change. I love that. I love that saying. I remember when I first started working for Chicago Recovery Alliance, and Dan used to say, well, Cheryl, any positive change. And he meant that it didn't matter how small or how big, as long as it was a positive change for that person.
Yeah.
And I got so much out of that. Because I brought that into my own life. I internalized that in my own life.
Yeah.
And I think anybody can. It just ain't for the people on the van. It's for anybody that wants to accept it, that any positive change in your life, whatever it is for you, that's what counts. Not what it is for me or Karen or Dan, or what it is for you.
Right.
And so coming to the van and getting clean stuff so that you don't transmit no diseases, I think that's a hell of a positive change. Maybe some people don't see it like that. Well, I've had people come to the van and actually, go off on me about being there and giving out clean syringes and stuff. Because they didn't see the positive change in that. And me sitting down, talking to them and explaining just what I mean, just what we do. Come aboard, see for yourself. People thought we was on the van at one time we was selling drugs. And I said, no. That's not what this is about, and they would come on the van and then they would see, and I would show them, and I would sit down and I would talk to them and explain to them exactly what we do and how that it's good for us to be in the community. We came in and we got all the dirty syringes off the streets because there was plenty of those, So that helped build relationships with the community. Because they was happy, because they was being able to see these dirty syringes on the streets, and they wasn't gonna pick them up. And here somebody just come out the blue and picking up syringes and cleaning the street and making sure that your children or my children don't pick any up or play with them, because a child doesn't know what that is. He just pick it up and, So that's how we build relationships in the community. That was real important. So, yeah.
I think just to kind of address like the practical aspect of building relationships, I jotted some stuff down, and I broke it up into two pieces. So like one is for anybody who's been to like, social work school or something, active listening. And sometimes I think for a lot of people that does take practice, and for other people it comes naturally. But as far as active listening goes, I think one of the first rules is do your own work on you first. So when people come to us, for services, they don't want to hear me talking about what I've been through or my problems, to monopolize the conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might be appropriate to sneak that in or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not here for us. We're here for them, and I think it's really important. And you don't want to push people, pay attention to social cues. If someone seems like they're in a hurry or they're uncomfortable, don't push it.
That's right.
it's very difficult not to have judgments in our head, I think, when we're dealing with the public in any capacity, whether that's like being a barista at Starbucks or an outreach worker at Chicago Recovery Alliance. But try and, keep that to yourself, and definitely do not condemn people. And that's not just with words. I think that we have to be really conscious of our body language a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that definitely, I think, takes practice. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
True.
And then one of the last things, just as far as that kind of general listening skill goes, is if you have an agenda when you're talking to someone, just please forget about it, push it away. Don't, because people will pick up on that immediately. If you have an agenda, you're going to come off as phony, and it'll just keep that mistrust going even longer, I think.
Yeah, well, that's a good point you just made. Because there have been times when maybe I'm tired. Really, I am emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and I may have came off kind of, and I had to get through that. I had to recognize it. I had to go home and say, wow, today I was really off. I was tired, and spiritually I just wasn't there, and physically. And Karen, that is really a good point you made, because when we dealing with the participants, we don't want to seem like we being judgmental. That was the first thing that I learned in harm reduction, because when I first came aboard, that's how I was being. I was like, why do you want to keep continuing to use? And George Williams, that man back there, he told me, he said, well, Cheryl, how would you would have felt? No, how did you feel when you were doing what you were doing? And people were so judgmental, and people was, always finding fault with everything you did, even when you was trying to do good. And I said, damn. I said, thank you. And I went home and I really thought about that. And it didn't happen overnight. But as time went on, I began to stop. It wasn't about me. It was about showing some love and some concern. I'm talking about some genuine love. I'm talking about some real love. So it got to a point when the people on the van actually would say, wow, I love you, Cheryl. And I'll be like, wow, I love you too. So it took a lot to get to that point for me, where I put my guards down, and I understand that just because I'm in recovery doesn't mean that everybody was wanted to be in recovery. It's just that simple. So why would I treat them any different than I would want somebody to treat me? It took a while. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've learned how to not bring so many of my feelings to about what I think. Or Karen hit it right on the head when she said that, because people do pick up on that. They will pick up on it, and one thing about us, we're not here to make anybody feel bad. Now that's the one thing I love about Chicago Recovery Alliance. We are not here to make people feel bad. We're here to, no matter where they are, to make them feel good, about themselves. That's what we're here for. So I just really love that about us, and we continue to do that kind of work. 26 years later, we're still on the same page as far as making sure that people know that we care. Yeah, that's what I want to say, that we care,
One of the things that frustrated me about working in other social services, before I was introduced to harm reduction, and I don't think it's as much like this as it was, when I was in my 20s. But one of the things I really hated was I felt like staff at social services, whatever it might be, were constantly in power struggles with the people who used those services. And it was such a waste of time, and so harmful, and um, I think that's just really important too. Like, luckily our services are really low threshold. So the chances of us getting in a power struggle with someone, it's pretty slim,
Yeah.
but it can happen. And an example I was thinking of was, so before we would get a lot of condoms from the city to give out to people. And recently, because of budget constraints, it's more limited now. And we have to tell people, hey, just take a couple handfuls today. And sometimes people don't do that for whatever reason. They really need those. Some people need them more than others. And um so I ask what I ask, and then I turn around. I'm not going to stand there and watch someone, and then if they take 3 handfuls, I'm not going to get into, hey, put one of those back. Like, it's just like, yeah, just unless someone is really hurting another person, I don't even get into it.
Yeah. And I remember that too when we first started working. That my ex-husband, one of my, I'm gonna just say my coworker, he would get mad at the people because when we first started, we would have them count how many they brought in, and he would get mad at them and say, "Well, that's not what you said you brought in," and he would argue with them, and I was like, "Why are you arguing with them? Why you do that? Well, they lied about this and they lied." And so one day Dan said, "Did you buy those syringes?" And I was like looking at him, like, okay, I'm glad finally, you know. And well, really, did the money come out of your pocket? We're not here to worry about if they lying about how many syringes they put in the sharp container. We here to make sure they got enough syringes and supplies to take care of everybody that they need to take care of. So I'm not worried about if you say you got 250 and it comes down to you got only had 200. How many, and I'm so grateful to Dan for coming up with how many, what do you need? Tell us what you need. It made life so much better. Yeah. It made it, I don't have to worry about, well, he took this and oh my God, he took all that. He took a case, he did this, he did that. No, we got to where everything turned out to be just fine, So we still talking about building relationships, That's how we build relationships with people. Trust them. Trust them, and hopefully they'll do the right thing. And that's what we did, and that's what we do now. And so, like I said, I'm real grateful for that. It keeps me where I don't go home worrying about whether that person lied, they told a lie, they say they was exchanging for 5 people and they knew. No, 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 no. Not today. We don't have to do that. So that's a part of building relationships, We have to build relationships with a lot of people. We have to build relationships with the delivery people. We have to build relationships with co-workers, people that's working in this for the city, the state. I mean, we have to know how to deal with relationships and people, because we have to build relationships with a lot of people. The garbage disposal people, the people that come to get the sharp containers. I mean, we have to deal with a lot of relationships, the cat, we have to get a relationship with the cat in here, and so every day it just more and more, and it becomes much easier if you just keep doing what you need to do and keep treating people. And this is something that I learned from my mother. Keep treating people the way that you want to be treated, and I think things will come out okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely treat them the way they want to be treated too. But I thought of something, and I think you're going to agree with me when I say this, but I thought of it like at the end when I was, thinking about this over the past few days. And that is a really important part of relationship building is boundaries. So I think what happens in harm reduction, a lot of new people to harm reduction, they think being a harm reduction is saying yes to everything and everyone. If someone calls me at 3 a.m, they want syringes, I'm going to go out there and do it. No, that's not how we have healthy relationships in other aspects of our life, um, and I think we can set good examples with people. If we're able to set constructive boundaries for our own health, mental and physical, they will prioritize that too, and learn how to, learn to set boundaries for themselves too. Because I think, especially people who use drugs, have so much guilt and shame. They also feel like they always have to say yes, and that's not true.
Yeah, wow, that's good. That's a good point right there. I didn't even think about that.
Me either.
Setting boundaries, because that's something that I didn't grow up knowing how to do. Set boundaries, I had to learn that becoming an adult. And when I say adult, I mean an old adult.
Me too.
I ain't talking about no young adult, because I still didn't know how, but setting boundaries is really important, especially with the work we do too. Yeah, and I left that one out, so that was great. I'm learning how to set boundaries with everybody. Just learn how to set them with everybody. You can't take me from here to there because you want to. No, let me try to do the best I can being there for you, but I don't want you to, just whatever. Like you said, if I call you at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, well, I need a delivery, excuse me, I'm gonna get out of my bed and do that. No, that's not how it works. Well, not for me. I don't know about anybody else, but not for me. We work from this time to that time. Yeah, we do deliveries, and we have people even come to our homes and get their supplies, but you still have to respect my boundaries, and that's awesome, I think. So and that's how we approach new relationships with folks. We come to them with any positive change, and I think that works for them.
And I think this COVID issue is really, I think, making us think about it even more, because things are changing and there's new negotiations now between people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there any questions?
There is questions. Are you ready for them?
Yeah.
Okay, we have one question so far. It's kind of a big question, and it's multiple questions in questions. So the question is, do you have any tips for addressing harmful behaviors in the harm reduction world? Another part is, what about participants? For example, disrespecting boundaries or saying racist, misogynistic things.
Do you have any tips?
Well, I'm thinking back to Dan, and sometimes a person might make me angry, whether that was a participant or a colleague or whatever. And I would be complaining, oh, they said this or whatever, and he would suggest, well, did you talk to them about it? And I would say no, because I'm so angry that it's not going to come out right. It's not going to be a useful conversation. And so that still is difficult for me, and one of the wonderful things about Dan, I think, that we miss is he was able to communicate with all kinds of people around all kinds of issues,
Yeah.
Including when participants would come on the van and say something racist or misogynist, or use inappropriate, language around drug use, like junkie or whatever. To be able to say these things with kindness, like, oh, on the van, we don't talk like that. If you believe that, can you just not bring it on the van or to this place or whatever?
Yeah,
that's a tough one though.
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
What was the first part of that question?
Brandy?
The first part is, do you have any tips for addressing harmful behaviors in the harm reduction world?
Oh, like with each other, I think the person means?
I think maybe.
Yeah.
Because then it says, what about participants? So it kind of does look like first community within community, maybe.
Yeah. I think it can be really challenging to practice harm reduction with people you have a really personal relationship, like say someone in your family. It can be challenging because a lot of personal stuff comes up, but be that as it may, I think one of the things I've thought a lot about over the years is how, because I have the opportunity to talk with people about, safer drug use or safer sex or, whatever the harmful behavior might be. That does not make me superhuman. That does not mean I choose all those options that I share with people. And so I think, we have to be able to be easy on ourselves, forgive ourselves, however you want to put it. And I think we have to do that very deliberately with our harm reduction colleagues and coworkers. We want to talk to people, especially people we work with, about the behavior, not whatever we think is causing the behavior. So that might be drug use, or it might be a lack of sleep, or what have you. Those are the things I can think of.
Yeah, well, right now this cat been on this table.
Oh shoot!
Missing my eye.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, well, I think that's good. I agree with you. I agree with Karen.
Good. We have another question. I don't think that cat's been in that room because we kicked that cat out a while ago. But
is this the new tablecloth?
No, this is the one I had last week.
Okay.
So the next question is from Samantha Kerr. Hi, Sam. What does it look like to prioritize relationships in the time of COVID, particularly via Zoom online stuff?
Yeah.
This is a hard question.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't either, but I don't even.
Well, okay.
Say it one more time, Brandy.
Okay. It says, what does it look like to prioritize relationships in the time of COVID, particularly via Zoom? So, I mean, y'all have been getting some deep exercise with that Zoom lately. So maybe talk about that.
It feels like for me, I mean, it's just like, it's just like a regular meeting, like a regular staff meeting. We all are there. We all have our opinions. We all come up with different opinions, different results. We communicate. Maybe they talking about that too. Communicate, and is it easier for us to come? In a way, it is. In a way, we not sitting next to each other, and so we, even though you can still see a person, and then we led by somebody that talks about stuff that's important. So we keep it. We fall off sometimes, but majority of the time when we have be on Zoom, we keep the focus. That's what I'm trying to say. Our director makes sure that we keep the focus. So I think it's been awfully. I think it's been great. I think that's what I think. I think it's been great. That's it.
Yeah, I think I've been happier with the Zoom than I thought I would be too.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about also just based on my own personal experience as a participant, say like with my doctor or a therapist, that telemedicine I think is initially a little challenging. I kind of put that in the kind of the same group as Zoom, because you're the Zoom is better because you can see, you can see someone's body language or whatever. But I think with the telemedicine, it's a little challenging. I think you have to be a lot more deliberate about what you're trying to convey as far as, feelings or, encouraging people or whatever. I think what's been challenging for Chicago Recovery Alliance, this is kind of off, this is not about Zoom, but, so on the van, the people who are able to serve, who are not immune compromised and are able to work on the van. So participants can't come on the van right now. And I bet that's really challenging for participants and for staff too. So again, I think we just have to be really deliberate with what we're trying to convey to someone, and to be sensitive to, is someone feeling isolated because I'm just talking to them through a window, or, I kind of have imagined it as like almost kind of having to rebuild relationships in this atmosphere, having to explain to people why we're doing this, and, it's for their protection, that kind of thing. I think it's just, all the way around, it's a lot more work, and we're still learning how to do it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I hadn't even thought about that part of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next.
All right. For each of you, what has been the biggest change in how you approach relationship building over the years since you started with CRA? So has there been a change in how you approach relationship building over the years?
Not for me, it haven't. I think the way I learned was the best way. For me, yeah. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it was the best way. And I continue to do the same thing today that I did when I first learned how to build a relationship. When I first, maybe a little change, but as far as meeting people where they are, being respectful, trying very, very hard not to be judgmental, it's the same thing I do today. I went through a period in my life, 98, when my daughter had got killed, where I felt myself pulling back. And that was because of my grief. I was grieving. So I was kind of didn't really want to do a lot of talking, but that didn't work. It didn't work because I am one of those people that I like people. And I do talk a lot. So, that didn't work. And I had to do a lot of praying for me to get back to where I was before that happened, and understand that those people didn't have anything to do with what I was going through. And I had to continue to be respectful and non-judgmental and loving and caring like I was supposed to be. Loving and caring, understanding, let them know that they could trust me, uh, those things. So that's what happens for me. I continue to do what I did when I first started and when I first learned, and when I really got into the field about harm reduction. And being a human being, you go through things, but you have to remember, my job consists of me being a certain way towards people. And I'm really grateful about that, because it hasn't stopped at my job. It goes even further in my life, just being considerate of people and, their feelings, and always trying to be respectful and, show some dignity. And so, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I think for me personally, we were just talking about setting boundaries. So I think that's something that, I've personally been working on over the years, and it changes and develops. But I would say the biggest thing that has changed since I started working in harm reduction is that it's become more kind of more mainstream. It's something we talk about at harm reduction conferences a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it can very easily become watered down, as people who will apply for harm reduction funding, but not really understand what harm reduction is, or maybe they don't care. So I think over the years, we've had, and I've noticed, colleagues doing this as well, having to address that aspect, like having to advocate for the values of harm reduction among colleagues in other services, having to educate more people, like participants, if oh well, they do harm reduction over at ABC agency, and it's not like this, and so how do you diplomatically educate someone of what true harm reduction is, and when all around you it's becoming watered down, and we have to really protect it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I hear her talking, but I don't see her.
Hope so.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
How do you decide whether or not to partner or build relationships with law enforcement departments who have done harm to people who use drugs or sex workers in the past?
Wow.
So, how do you make that decision? And
How do you make
That
this
was a tough
decision?
one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this comes up occasionally, I think. And we've had, with different leadership, in the past year and a half after Dan died, you know, so we've seen actually a couple of different approaches, I think, you know, with Dan, through his example, I think we learned, you know, every person gets a chance, you know, so if there's a police officer or, you know, some law enforcement person that's interested in working with us or something, you know, I can't, that's never happened where they've come here to do that, I don't think.
No.
But, you know, reaching out to police officers to do like the, you know, overdose intervention. So, you know, judging or evaluating someone, you know, each individual, rather than lumping them in with like, oh, that's just a law enforcement person. But then we had another approach after that, which was like, hell no, no law enforcement person is coming here under any circumstances. And, you know, I could see that side too. Like, you know, so I think it's challenging, you know, especially as we struggle so much with the racism in our country and people being harmed by police. And but yet, you know, we have to work together on some level, you know. So I guess treating each law enforcement person as an individual and knowing what we're willing to put up with and what we're not, you know. So maybe that person doesn't wear a uniform if for some reason they're going to come here, or I don't know.
You know what? One thing about now we know that the police have taken the participants' cards, have taken their stuff and thrown it away, and you know, we know that because they've came back and told us, right? But out of the 26 years of me working for Chicago Recovery Alliance, I have really never had an experience, a personal experience with the police coming on the van, telling me that we don't need to be here. I have never had that. And actually, I've had them come on the van and say, what y'all do? And, you know, want to know what we do. And then, like you said about Dan, we started getting into building relationship with them with the Narcan. And so I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And so, and they respect that. So as far as dealing with the police, I haven't really ever had a bad thing with the police. I haven't. I haven't, you know. And they don't come on the van and say, well, y'all need to move and we don't want you. You know, I've never had that. So, you know, now the ones that take the participants supplies and take their card and tear it up. In the beginning, that was happening a lot because they just didn't understand. They was like, what? You can carry syringes? They didn't understand, you know. But as time went on, they began to see that didn't only just benefit the participant, it kept them out of harm's way too. And once they began to recognize and see that, they became okay, you know, with what we do. So, you know, I mean, I don't just gonna trust them to come up in here and sit down at the table. I don't know. I might do. I might trust them to sit over there and ask me some questions, and I tell them, yeah, this and that and that. And that. But so far, it's been okay. We can honestly say it's been okay.
Yeah, we're lucky in Chicago. I know in other parts of the state of Illinois, that's not the case.
Indiana too.
Yeah, probably in a lot of states.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I, you know, had to like give a definitive answer to that question, I would say something like, that we're better off, I think, you know, doing our own work separately and coming together only when necessary, like around the overdose issue.
Yep. I think that's great. Yeah.
All right, you ready for another one? It's kind of relates to a little bit of what you were talking about previously. How do you view harm reduction organizations that only emphasize the medical model of harm reduction and downplay or ignore the social justice aspect of the movement? So, how do you view folks that say harm reduction, but ignore the whole social justice piece?
Now that one got me.
I'll tell you what I say. I if you're not doing the social justice piece, you're not doing harm reduction. That's just plain and simple. I communicate what you're doing is risk reduction. And that's a lot different. I think risk reduction has an agenda of abstinence. We do overdose prevention because a dead drug user can't recover, and
yeah.
that's not just why we're keeping people alive, so and to just try and communicate as diplomatically as possible my strong beliefs about what is and is not harm reduction. And maybe I'm too opinionated about that, I don't know, but that's what I do.
I agree with Karen on that. You can
Yeah, I
agree with you on that one.
That's a beautiful answer. I
Totally.
think it's totally appropriate. All right. So the next one is harm reduction is a foreign term in smaller communities. Do you have any tips for dealing with closed-minded people who are viewed as leaders in these smaller communities, and also great webinar CRA?
How do you deal with like your church friends? Like, is there
Oh yeah, okay. How do I deal with them? Believe me, it is hard. It is hard. It is hard to make people that. For me, the reason they being so hard is because they just don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't understand. I mean, if I sit down and I explain to you, and if you just sit down and have an open mind, that's what's important. You got to have an open mind when you talk to somebody about harm reduction, because some people, first of all, they'd be like, I've never heard of that, Mm-hmm. And so then when for me, when I talk to people that are part of my I can even say my recovery, because they look at it one way, we don't use it, no cost, so, but when they find out what kind of work I do and I talk to them, it takes time to get people to really get this. It really does. It's not a one-time session. You have to have an open mind. You must have an open mind. And if you don't, you ain't gonna get it. You're not going to get it. That's simple. You're not gonna get it. You must understand, and you must be able to try to understand that everybody don't live like you live. I mean, you know that, but you don't know it. You know what I'm saying? You know it, but you don't know it. You have to, we used to invite people on the van so they could see what we do on the van. Because as long as they heard it, they would look at it like a horrible thing. Oh, you're giving out needles and you're causing these people to use drugs and all of that. But after me, come to the van and just watch what we do. And then sitting down and talking to people and giving them but letting them know you got to have an open mind to this now. Because if you got a closed mind, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. And so they say, okay, I'm gonna have an open mind. And so you sit down and you explain and you talk about everything that we do and the reason we do what we do and the effects that it has on the community. Then people begin to open up and understand. Even Karen said, what about the people that go to my church? I've had to share with the people that go to my church what I do. And I'm honestly, some of them say, you give out syringes?
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. And I have to say, now you gonna have open mind to what I'm saying, or are you gonna just look at things the way you look at them? No, I really want to know. I really want to understand this. And once I talk to them, and they may not get it completely at one time. So the next time we talk on the phone or whatever, and you still doing that work that you yeah, I'm still doing it. Well, you know what? I'm beginning to understand a lot better. I'm beginning to see what harm reduction does. And it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And I understand you guys having to give out syringes, keeping people from getting HIV, hepatitis C. And then especially if you put their family in it. If you say, well, what about if it was your family member? Yeah. And then they look, what? What about if it was one of your family members? Because we all got somebody in our family that's doing something that we don't, think that may be right. So what about that? Oh, never looked at it like that. There you go.
And Dan used to, that goes along with this is, so he would often invite people complaining about what we do. Come, you're welcome to come on the van and see what we do. And so many times people would say no. And I think that was because they knew if they come on the van and they see the people using the services, they're going to realize, like you said, they're going to start thinking about their family, or like, oh, wow, that's the crossing guard over here. Or this is my neighbor who has such a beautiful garden. I thought it was like, the devil incarnate coming up here on the van.
Yeah.
No. But some people just really don't want to admit that.
Yeah. That's right.
All right. We have one last question. And before we close out this really amazing webinar, I'm a big fan of it, just so you two know. What are some things you do to take care of yourself so that you can continue building relationships with participants and colleagues? The time, the things you do in the time for yourself.
Go home and rest.
Sleep.
Go home and think about, this is what I used to do. Oh, wow. I'm glad you asked that. Well, every day when I used to get off of work and I get home, I would think about what good I did today. Today I helped somebody and I helped save somebody's life today. And that's the way I had to do for me. And I would go home and I would feel so good about myself that I was able to help somebody. That's how I get through. Knowing that, you know what? As a matter of fact, that's what helped me when my daughter died. When my daughter helped. Because I knew that I was helping some young lady that was her age, that was going through. And I was able to be there just to hear them talk. I let them, some Karen said, no, I don't have to say anything. I let them talk. And they hear themselves. And whatever they needed to hear, they heard it, because it was quiet, it was peaceful, they could say it, So every day, and even though I haven't been working on the van in a few months, 26 years of working on that van 5 days a week, I had to learn. I had to look at the participants, and I go home. And sometimes I have days where they be kind of antsy because maybe they're not feeling good or whatever, but I have to hold myself steady. You know, I can't get caught up in that. So when I leave and I get home and I go in my room and I go in my house, I said, wow, Cheryl, do you know you saved somebody's life today? That's how I get through. Even if I just come to the office and make supplies, those supplies that I'm making is helping to save somebody's life. It's keeping them from having to use the same cooker. It's keeping them from having to